Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here. I had a few minutes while doing some work this morning to think about some of the feedback I've seen after Endgame was released and trying to compare that to kind of a modern day equivalent of the Star Wars phenomenon that was popular when I was young. And I say when I was young, even though I grew up a little bit after the fact. I was born in '82, so Return of the Jedi was released the year after I was born, so I really grew up with Star Wars on VHS. And so I didn't really have those in theaters until the special editions came about in the mid to late 90s, I think it was, late 90s. And then, of course, when the prequel trilogy came out, I was all over that in theaters. That's a whole other discussion, really. But I wanted to just talk a little bit about that comparison. Is the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the same thing as what the Star Wars phenomenon was? I think in a lot of ways, yeah, it is for this generation. The level of hype and excitement for Endgame that people have been displaying is really, I think, in a lot of ways, unparalleled in this decade. I think the most recent comparison of something that I could throw out there would be either The Force Awakens when that came out, or the fervor leading up to The Last Jedi, despite the fact of how divisive that was. Or maybe the final Harry Potter movie. I feel like people were pretty excited about that. But I think in a lot of ways, the MCU is a good analogy for what Star Wars was to my generation, with a few exceptions. Again, I grew up in the the late '80s, early '90s, born in the early '80s, and I had to wait years and years. I mean, all Star Wars fans went through this, but years and years after Return of the Jedi to get a new Star Wars movie in the theater. And when that came about, I think a lot of us went to see it and sort of told ourselves, well, it was pretty good. Maybe not exactly what I was hoping for, but on retrospect and looking back at it, The Phantom Menace is by far the worst of the Star Wars movies, in my opinion. It's not even close. Despite how people feel about The Last Jedi, a lot of people, I like The Last Jedi, but I think it's the worst one. But we had this huge gap of time where we had to wait to get a new movie. I think that was released in '99. So from '83 to '99, we did not have a new Star Wars movie in theaters. The MCU is cranking out a couple of movies every year, and they're all good. And I feel like it's reached a point now where you can almost always count on the quality of the movie being at least good. Maybe not always great, maybe not always fantastic or amazing, but at least most of the time good. That was not always the case with Star Wars. The original movie was great, Empire was great, Return of the Jedi was great, but then when we got to The Phantom Menace, I think a lot of us were hit with the fact, especially after processing what we had seen, that, well, we may not be getting good Star Wars movies. This could be a long haul ahead of us. And that was ultimately the case, I would say, with Attack of the Clones being definitely better, but still not a good movie. And then Revenge of the Sith being a legitimately good movie in my mind, and from there it's taken off. I personally think all the Disney offerings have been really good, if not great. But that's me. I love Star Wars, so I'm gonna like it almost no matter what. Almost. Again, there are some things that don't work out for me, such as the Phantom Menace, but with the MCU, you can count on those movies as being great. So I've seen a lot of people make that comparison, and I think it is a fair comparison with some differences. Again, we had sort of the long time gap between movies with Star Wars, but I watched a video last night with Boogie2988 talking about that comparison a little bit in his review of Endgame. And I think he's right to say that people should appreciate it while it's happening. It's not often that this kind of phenomenon comes along and really galvanizes fans and a fan base with good quality offerings every time it comes out. So who knows what's going to happen after Endgame. Maybe things will continue to be awesome with these movies. You never know. They've definitely written it in sort of an interesting direction where things are going to go from here. But I just wanted to offer a few thoughts on that. But if you're my age, if you're in your late 30s at this point, or even mid 30s, and you grew up with Star Wars, what do you think about that? Do you think that the comparison is a valid one, or does it not always work? If you like the video, hit the thumbs up button. If you want to see more of this type of content, subscribe and let me know that. And I hope everybody has a great weekend.